Hey everybody, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show. The Brexit negotiations are reaching a serious crunch. All of the leaders, the prime ministers and presidents of Europe, will get together in Brussels on the 14th and 15th of December. It is at that meeting that the British government had hoped to move on to some serious talks about what our trade relationship with the European Union will be once we've left. But there's a problem, and that is that all the European leaders, and I'm talking about Monsieur Barnier, Verhofstadt, Juncker, and indeed Donald Tusk, all of them are now as one. And they've given us an ultimatum. They've told us that unless by the end of this month we have satisfied their demands, in particular on the future of the border between Northern and Southern Ireland, and on the so-called Brexit divorce bill, where it appears they want us to pay 60 billion euros, unless those demands are met, they will have to tell, with regret, they say, the leaders in Brussels that insufficient progress has been made and that we cannot move on to discussing trade, which would mean that the next time all the leaders get together would not be until March in 2018, by which time the Article 50 process is beginning to disappear. We're running out of time. So it is a very, very big moment. What is the government going to do? How are they going to respond? And to try and help me through this, somebody that's been watching these European negotiations for many a year is Adam Bolton, editor-at-large for Sky News and commentator for the Sunday Times. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
Well, you've seen all of this, Adam, from the Maastricht Treaty onwards and various crises. How does this rate in terms of seriousness?
Well, it's obviously very serious because this is the most dramatic change in Britain's position vis-à-vis Europe since the 1970s. So there's serious talk on both sides. My feeling about the negotiations is that we know how Europe does business. I mean, you know very well from all the time you spent at Strasbourg and Brussels that things do tend to go down to the line, and that however carefully the backroom boys, if you like, prepare the negotiations, in the end it comes down to a head-to-head between the leaders, particularly the big leaders of Germany, France, Italy, Britain, and the rest. So I think there's a certain amount of theatre in all of this. This is the moment for the European Union to try and stand up for their interests in the process of Brexit. Obviously, that relates to the money. It relates to the what they call citizens' rights, EU citizens in this country and UK citizens in the EU. And it relates to this really existential question for Ireland, what the border is going to look like. So I think they're going to put the squeeze on as much as they can. But realistically, they know that Britain is on course to leave the European Union in 18 months' time. And so I think they will agree that they've got to have some sort of framework for what things are going to look afterwards when we come towards the end of the year. There may be a few weeks' delay and a bit of drama, but I think they know they've got to start talking about this in the round fairly soon.
I mean, I'm assuming that they're not bluffing. I mean, they're basically saying that unless by the 1st of December we're satisfied with the progress you've made, we can't recommend that European Council even discusses the issue of trade. And I just wonder, in Westminster, within our own party, if Mrs May was to say, OK, we agree, it's 60 billion euros, how does that go down with their own backbenchers?
Well, they know that, and they know on both sides that that's extremely sensitive. Now, effectively, one interpretation of the speech she gave in Florence would actually be that Britain is going to pay what it owes, and one version of it would be about 60 billion. I think if it emerges this week in hard figures, 60 billion, that would be a disaster because Eurosceptics would have to protest at that, bearing in mind that Boris Johnson talked about not a penny and listening for anything more than 10 billion. But if it just comes down to Britain has agreed that it will pay its obligations, that will probably be enough if there has been a nod and a wink behind. I mean, strangely, I think the biggest problem is this Irish question. I think it's absolutely massive. I think it got sidelined because, relatively to the rest of Europe, obviously Ireland is a small country, but I think it's a very dramatic issue, and for the Irish government, it is absolutely existential what their relationship is with the north of Ireland, bearing in mind all the history of the Troubles which we know about.
Yeah, but I mean, we have had a common travel area with Ireland since 1921, so I don't think the movement of people back and forth really is the problem. But I do see there's a point about goods if we're leaving the customs union and there isn't a free trade agreement. I mean, surely shouldn't the Irish government be arguing strongly to have a free trade non-tariff deal to keep that border as free as possible?
Yeah, and I think they would like that. I mean, obviously the Irish government would like Britain to stay in the European Union, which would involve having, as you say, a free trade area and freedom of movement. The problem is that there need to be, if Britain is going to be outside the EU and Ireland's going to be in it, there obviously has to be some sort of border control, and that clearly would affect the free movement of people and the travel area, whether people like it or not. And I think one of the issues the British government is only just coming to realise is whether it might have to agree some sort of special status within the island of Ireland.
Which could easily be negotiated, couldn't it? I mean, the one thing I get, Adam, is from the unionist community in the north. I mean, no one there is urging for there to be a hard border. There is general agreement that we have to try and make this as relaxed a border as we possibly can.
Yeah, but if the consequence of that is that effectively there's a border in the Irish Sea between the island of Great Britain and the island of Ireland, I don't think that will be acceptable to unionists, particularly, as we know, Nigel, now that the government is reliant on their votes to survive in the House of Commons.
Yes, now, I don't think the Ulster Unionist movement in the shape of the DUP has ever been in a more powerful position. I certainly agree with that. Adam, give me a prediction. Do you think that when Mrs May turns up in Brussels on the afternoon of the 14th of December to meet all the other leaders, do you think trade would be discussed?
I don't think it will be explicitly discussed at that summit. I think the best that they'll get for the summit is an agreement to start early in the new year, talking about negotiations in the round. But, as has been pointed out throughout these talks, it is not in the interest of either side in trade terms to have a hard Brexit. And therefore, I think, there is some concern that people do business is very, very concerned on both sides of the channel about their planning for the future and what they need to set to one side. So my guess is they won't talk about trade, certainly at that summit, and I think there may have to be further summits on that. But, what we're really talking about is can they move towards that deadline, which is frankly a year's time, of having a draft agreement, as you know, that they can then put to national and regional parliaments. Yeah. And things are really ticking away. But I think, bear in mind these people are politicians, and to fail in negotiations is really a total admission of failure of the political process.
Adam, I will see you at that summit in Brussels on the 14th of December, and thank you very much indeed for joining me here on LBC this Sunday morning. Well, Adam Bolton, kind of saying, however dramatic it looks on the big picture, quietly through the back channels, negotiations do take place, and even if it appears at that summit trade's not being discussed, somehow behind the scenes it will be. I still can't get away from the feeling myself that the demands that are being made by these unelected people in Brussels, I almost said nobodies, that wouldn't have been kind, would it? The demands that are being made are frankly wholly unreasonable, and I think if Theresa May was to agree to pay 60 billion euros as our parting shot from the European Union, I don't think the Conservative grassroots in this country would put up with it, and frankly, nor should they, in my view. Matthew in Heathrow is our first caller of the morning. So, Matthew, the government is in a bit of a pickle. What do you think Theresa May should do in the next fortnight?
Well, basically, I think, morning, Nigel, we just got to tell them what they want to hear, because we do want to get onto those trade talks. So basically, if we've got to offer more money, we offer more money. But basically, I mean, it's all subject to the final deal. So it's likely, once we get onto the trade deal, if they're not going to give us that free trade, we're going to walk away. But the main issue is the Northern Ireland issue, and unfortunately, the Conservatives have a conflict of interest. We've now got to get Northern Ireland, all the parties, to be talking together, and I think Jeremy Corbyn now has to go through the back door and actually get them together talking, because it's not going to be resolved until we get the people in the parties in Northern Ireland to be resolving it themselves between Southern Ireland.
I get the feeling, Matthew, genuinely, that the people that are causing the most problem with the Irish border issue are the European Commission themselves. They're the ones that are constantly talking up this difficulty. And whenever I speak to people in the north or the south, they're all for a sensible, pragmatic step forward. So Ireland may be a huge issue, and you know, indeed Adam Bolton, Matthew, thought the same. But just coming back to this money point, Matthew, you know, they're asking us to commit to, I think at current exchange rates, 53 billion sterling. And in return for which, they're guaranteeing us nothing but that we'll be able to talk about trade. I mean, it's almost like a ransom demand, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I understand. I mean, the way I see it, as long as it's the whole deal, so as long as we could sort of say, yeah, we will pay that, and possibly then we'll keep free trade for 5-10 years if we have to pay in so much money at the end of it once we get onto the trade. But we need to get that free trade, and obviously they do need money, and they do need our support for a while.
Oh, they need money, all right. They certainly need money, all right. They've got plenty of money problems. Matthew, thank you. Matthew thinks that actually getting towards free trade, even if it costs a great deal of money, is where we need to be. I find this figure of 60 billion euros wholly unreasonable. It's been plucked out of the air. I don't think there's any situation in which we should be paying anything like that to them. That's my view. Now, in a minute, there's a head-to-head debate between Alistair Campbell and myself. I can't think of two people in this country with more polarised, opposite opinions. You'll enjoy it. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 10:15.
This is LBC.
At Homebase, we're all about great Christmas value, like 7-foot artificial trees from just £15, and you can have it delivered to your door for only £5. Homebase, always low prices, terms and conditions apply.
Welcome aboard the 205 to Bow Church Station via helping the local team's goalkeeper get off at St Mary's Hospital, announcing a change of route due to road closures, directing a family to my boy's favourite spot, Regent's Park, asking passengers to move down so a wheelchair user can get on board, and helping a boy who'd lost his bag.
Richard does more than drive the bus, because to him, the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Whether your business is small or large, your ambitions for it are always big. And so are ours. That's why, no matter what size your business, we have local business relationship managers who'll help you along the way. So with us in your corner, the sky's the limit. To see why we've been awarded Business Bank of the Year 3 years running, visit santanderbusiness.co.uk. Here to help your business prosper. Santander.
Business Money Facts Award 2015 to 2017.
What if you could get that winning feeling every single month? With NS&I's premium bonds, every month you could win tax-free prizes from £25 up to £1 million. And NS&I guarantees that every pound of your savings is 100% secure, because we're backed by HM Treasury. Who knew saving could be so exciting? Premium bonds at nsandi.com. Minimum initial investment £100. NS&I. Safer savings set you free.
In winter, 1 minute it's, the next it's, and the next it's... If your boiler's as unpredictable as the weather, now's the time to get a new one with 0% interest-free credit for 2 years from British Gas. I thought penguins didn't get cold, Wilbur. For a new boiler with interest-free credit, search British Gas New Boiler. Offer ends 31st of December. Stay a step ahead of winter with British Gas. Conditions apply. We're a credit broker offering products from a panel of lenders. Credit subject to status.
If you haven't taxed your car, here's something to think about. At the DVLA, we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. Currently, we are clamping or impounding over 10,000 untaxed vehicles every month. It's nothing personal. It's the law. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/car tax.
Do you feel as if you never get enough sleep? Hamsey Sleep Centres have the answer. Buy a new mattress from our promotional range today and we'll give you up to £100 trade-in on your old one. And up to £200 off your new one, free local delivery, free mattress protector and a free pair of pillows. Plus a full 10-year guarantee. We'll even give you a 100-night sleep trial. Hamsies, Beckenham, Bexley Heath, Leatherhead, New Malden and Wallington. And at hamsies.co.uk.
My Christmas wrapping is shameful, I admit. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a box with this many corners. But here's hoping Mum will be distracted by the gift, because inside is a locket holding a tiny little scan of her first grandchild.
Happy Christmas, Grandma.
At the post office, it's never just post. Find out more at postoffice.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
Earlier on, I spoke to Alistair Campbell this morning, who is editor-at-large for the New European, and I started by asking him what Donald Tusk's ultimatum means to him.
Well, first of all, Nigel, before we go on, I think I need to take you up on something you tweeted about me yesterday.
Well, yeah, no, I'm very happy to do so.
You called me a traitor.
No, I didn't use the word traitor. I tell you, well, let's get the context. I didn't even use that word, but let's get the context of this right, shall we? We have a government that was elected on a Brexit manifesto. Indeed, the Labour Party, the opposition, were also elected in June on a Brexit manifesto, and all of this following a referendum. So, like it or not, to me, the settled will of the country is that the government pushes ahead with Brexit and does the best job for the country that it can.
Right, but two things to say on that. The first is, Theresa May did not get a majority for the hard Brexit policy that she put to the people. The second thing is that millions of people, like me, voted Labour as, in our view, the best way to stop her getting that majority. So it's more complicated. You cannot say that 8 out of 10 people voted for Brexit because they voted Tory or Labour. And the other thing I would say is that democracy did not stop on June the 24th. And as we see the absolute chaos and incompetence at the heart of these negotiations, I think people are allowed to think again. They're certainly allowed, in my case, where I haven't changed my views since June the 23rd, to point out, as I did, that when the Irish Prime Minister says that this government has not thought things through, he is entitled to say that, and I'm entitled to say, who's somebody who passionately believes in maintaining the progress made in the Good Friday Agreement, that this government hasn't even thought through the question of the border in Ireland.
Well, let's get.
I was making, and I just think.
Fine, but Alistair, why did you vote? Why did you vote Labour? Why did you vote for what you consider to be hard Brexit? Because I listened to that Labour manifesto launch. In fact, I said on LBC how impressed I was by the things that Corbyn had said, because in that manifesto was very clear, was leaving the European Union, leaving the single market, and ending the free movement of people. That is what every Labour MP was elected on. And all I'm arguing is the settled will of the country is we should push ahead to Brexit. And as for the Irish,
it's not settled.
Why did you vote for what you call hard Brexit in the general election?
I am a Labour person all my life. The election, as Jeremy Corbyn, I mean, the one thing I'd say Jeremy Corbyn did very, very well is, even though Brexit is the defining issue of our times, he managed to persuade people it was actually about jobs and health and education. I voted Labour because I felt that was the best way to stop Theresa May getting the landslide that she planned for the hard Brexit. So you cannot say she has a mandate for the policy that she put forward. I would say a hung parliament means, particularly with the DUP as propping up the government and the impact that has on the Northern Ireland peace process, you cannot say that the will of the people is settled. I have never known the country more divided, more angry, more determined, more feeling that the leadership in our country is absolutely woeful.
Well, I wouldn't disagree. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you on that point. But
that means, Nigel, we cannot just go along with what Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, David Davis, Liam Fox tell us is the settled will of the people. It is not. And so I am going to keep arguing to stop this madness, because I think it's going to fundamentally damage our country.
Now, I know you take that view, and I know you believe that, and I take, of course, the opposite view. But, Alistair, the reason that we had our Twitter spat was that you were encouraging a foreign government in these negotiations to, and I quote you, play hardball. Now, surely, whether you like Brexit or not, you should be on our side, not their side.
But listen, this is, when it comes to Ireland, having spent a very, very decent part of my life working with Tony Blair and others to get the Good Friday Agreement in place, I actually don't see this as being us against the Irish. I see this as Brexit potentially destroying one of the most important progresses that we made. And to this day, 18 months in, I have not heard a single thing from a single government minister explaining how they are going to deliver Brexit across the island of Ireland without bringing back some sort of hard border.
Well, let me tell you, Alistair. Well, let me tell you how easy this is. The first thing is, we don't need lectures from Brussels on how to deal with the free movement of people with Ireland. We've had a common travel area since 1921. So
that's because we've been in and out together.
So that ends that.
No, it doesn't, Nigel.
When it comes to...
I'm sorry, no, Nigel, I'm not letting you get away with that. I'm not letting you get away with that.
And they're not part of Schengen.
Because we've been in and out together. This is going to be us out, them in, and we will be the only land border. Now, that is a problem. It is a real problem, which I'm afraid you and Johnson and all the rest of you, you just will away. You don't actually think through the detail.
But we don't need a hard border if we have a free trade agreement with the Republic of Ireland. And that's the argument. And my goodness me, you know, I've had Irish farmers contacting me, very worried about the stance their own government in Dublin is taking. If we have the free movement of goods between the north and the south, we don't need a hard border. But, you know, let's see where we get to on that. But can I bring you back to the fact that we're now in a position where, as I say, the hierarchy in Brussels have given us an ultimatum, effectively, that we have to offer them a gargantuan sum of money, or they will not, at the summit on the 14th and 15th of December, discuss trade with us. What should we do, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think the government is in a complete mess, I believe, of its own making. I've been involved in lots of these European negotiations down the years, and I actually think that the Europeans have been perfectly reasonable in the way that they've tried to take this forward. I think they were right to say that the so-called divorce bill is important, right to say that the Northern Ireland border is important, and right to say that the issue of EU citizens living here and UK citizens living in the rest of the EU. So I think they picked the right issues, and it exposes how ill thought through this whole project is, and how how little planning the British government did and has done since, that we are still so far away from meeting those. And the other thing I would say about the divorce bill settlement, these are gargantuan sums, as you say.
Yeah.
But they are as nothing compared to the sorts of sums that we're going to see drained out of the British economy if we leave the single market.
But I heard that argument if we didn't join the euro. I was told by your guys in 2000, if we don't join the euro, foreign and direct investment will drain out of the country. And look, you know, we've got economists like Patrick Minford saying we could be 130 billion better off over the next decade.
Listen, you've got your token economist, you've got your token businessman with James Dyson.
Oh, and Tim Martin and many, many others.
Nigel, I know that you're a politician and you're used to hearing the sound of your own voice, but you're now a radio host. Can you allow your guests to speak?
Oh, I think we're doing plenty of that, Alistair. But I mean, whatever the economic future, Alistair.
Let me finish the point.
Tell me how 60 billion is justified.
Let me finish the point. Nigel, can you just hold your horses 1 second? Let me finish the point. Are you seriously saying, because you can quote Patrick Minford, that the balance, I know that you people hate experts because Michael Gove said we shouldn't respect them anymore. Are you saying that the balance of economic and business opinion is in favour of Brexit, and saying that Brexit will boost the British economy? Because 99% of the ones that I speak to say the exact opposite.
The situation is the big corporates all go with the establishment, all go with the European Union. When you get to entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized businesses, you find a completely different answer to that question.
I do a thing. Let me say something, Nigel. Every single event I do, whether it's a school or a college or a university or a business convention or the Association of Colleges that I did this week or a health service conference I did the week before, I now start by asking 4 questions. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about Trump? It's 90% to 100% pessimistic. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about Brexit? I've yet to get an audience with more than 15% optimistic about Brexit. And do you think Theresa May will be there at the next election? Next to none. And do you think Jeremy Corbyn will be Prime Minister? It's about 10%. We have got a crisis of leadership in this country, and we are facing the biggest challenge we've faced since the Second World War, and we're doing it, as you're interviewing, your questions are showing to me again today, on the basis of wishful thinking and sort of raking up arguments from the past. Every balanced opinion, expert opinion on the economy and on business is terrified of what's happening.
And yet 70%, and yet 70% in the opinion polls, 70% consistently now want the government to press on with Brexit. Alistair, I'm going to ask...
Partly because you've got both main parties saying there's no alternative. Lord Kerr, in my view, showed last week you can stop this process if the country changes its mind, and with proper leadership, I am absolutely convinced the country actually is changing its mind without leadership. With leadership, I've got no doubt whatsoever people will want at least to think again, because this is a catastrophe in the making. And you, Nigel, are partly responsible for it. I know you're very proud of that, but I think history has done you very
No, I believe we should govern our own country, but I want these negotiations to be a success. It looks to me, although it's going to be very difficult, Mrs May is being asked to stump up 60 billion euros within the next fortnight for the conversation to even continue, should she say yes to their financial demands.
Well, she's in a negotiation, and these negotiations are like jigsaw puzzles in a way. There's all sorts of different moving pieces. But I repeat the point I made. Because of the woeful way that the debate is conducted in this country, because of the woeful way they've managed the negotiations, what should have been something that they should have been able to sort out fairly early in these negotiations has now become a massive thing. I repeat the point I made. If this leads to no deal, if this leads to us crashing out into the WTO, we are talking about damage to our economy that runs way, way beyond any sum that's being discussed now. So she needs to start getting a grip of it. And the reason why she can't, Nigel, the reason why they are in such trouble, I've never seen a negotiation of any government, frankly, including coalition governments that operate in the rest of the European Union, that is so divided, so briefing against each other, so not a team. It
must remind you of the good old days of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
At least we had the divisions, but we got an awful lot done.
OK, Alistair Campbell, this one will run and run, and thank you for coming on this morning.
All the best.
Well, that was Alistair Campbell, the voice of Remain. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 10:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrissicker.
Philip Hammond says he'll promise to speed up house building when he delivers his budget on Wednesday. With the Chancellor under pressure over his tax and spending plans, Mr Hammond says he does want to help younger voters. The man who's leading the campaign to replace Zimbabwe's president says Robert Mugabe will be removed as leader later. The country's ruling ZANU-PF party will hold a special meeting where it's thought the decision will be made. David Cassidy's spokesperson says he is conscious and surrounded by family after suffering organ failure. The 67-year-old singer and actor, best known for his role in the Partridge Family, has kidney failure and also needs a liver transplant. LBC weather: cloudy across the southwest, sunny elsewhere, with rain spreading into the west and northwest by late afternoon, a high of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel, there are queues in New Cross. The A20 Lewisham Way is partially blocked both ways because of an accident involving 2 cars at Florence Road. In Bow, on the A12 Blackwall Tunnel approach, the traffic lights aren't working on the roundabout at the Bow interchange. It's slow in Camden on Adelaide Road northbound. There's a lane closed at Hillgrove Road because of an accident. In Northolt, Whitton Avenue West is closed in both directions because of a police investigation between Floreston Court and Petts Hill. And on the Tube, there are severe delays on the Piccadilly line westbound between Acton Town, Uxbridge and Heathrow Terminals 1, 2 and 3. That's because of a signal failure. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Come and experience Lebanese dining at Marouche Restaurants. Try some of our amazing dishes, kafta dipped in a delicious hummus, or a colourful meze, complemented by a robust Lebanese red. With live music and traditional belly dancing, enjoy an atmosphere to match the food's rich and distinctive flavours. Go to Marouche.com to find out more. Marouche Restaurants, the finest Lebanese food across London.
I know how to avoid a soggy bottom. I know the name of cinema's most famous white shark. I know all the things you can do with a Maris Piper. And I definitely know the TV show that made this music famous. But I don't know my state pension.
Find out more about your state pension and how much it should be. Get to know your pension. Visit yourpension.gov.uk.
Right now at B&Q, buy the Stanley Fatmax Combi Drill for £100 and get a free 70-piece accessory set. Better hurry though, that's a hard-to-beat offer on a pro-quality product, and it's only available at B&Q. Offer ends Thursday 23rd of November. Some stores excluded. See DIY.com for details.
We've been thinking about dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves, you get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
Betty Butter bought some butter and she said the butter's bitter, better butter would make the batter better, so she bought a bitter butter better than the bitter butter.
Yes, you've guessed it. N-Power's back with more superpowers, and I'm with Sheila, the tongue-twisting genius.
I've got another.
Crack on, Sheila.
N-Power presents planet-protecting power at a pocket-pleasing price.
Tongue-boggling! Mind if I translate?
Go for it.
You can go greener with N-Power's Go Green Energy Fix, and they'll plant a tree for every sign-up. Switch to green at npower.com/go-green. You have the N-Power. Terms, conditions and exclusions apply.
Whether your business is small or large, your ambitions for it are always big. And so are ours. That's why, no matter what size your business, we have local business relationship managers who'll help you along the way. So with us in your corner, the sky's the limit. To see why we've been awarded Business Bank of the Year 3 years running, visit santanderbusiness.co.uk. Here to help your business prosper. Santander.
Business Money Facts Award 2015 to 2017.
The DVLA can spot an untaxed car a mile off. So, whether you're from Sutton-on-Sea and drive an SUV, or East Ham and own a white van, the fact is we have the records of over 37 million vehicles on our database. So if you haven't taxed your car, we'll find it. Tax it or lose it. Go to gov.uk/DVLA/taxitnow.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
The EU bosses have given Theresa May an ultimatum. She has a fortnight to solve the Irish border issue and to cough up the cash. Otherwise, when all the European leaders meet on the 14th and 15th of December, we won't be able to talk about trade. So it's a pretty serious situation, and I'm asking you, do you think David Davis and his team will meet that December deadline? Let me know what you think by calling 0345 6060 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And, of course, you can watch the show live on Facebook and comment there too. Well, I'm guessing that the only way that we can satisfy the demands that we're getting from Mr. Tusk and others is to meet their demands. But they're not being very nice about it, are they? I mean, Donald Tusk, former Polish Prime Minister, President of the European Council, in response to David Davis saying that we've compromised, which we did after the Florence speech from Theresa May, David Davis saying it's now the EU's turn to compromise. And Tusk replied, I really appreciate Mr. Davis's English sense of humour. I mean, they're not even being nice about it. I'm guessing what we saw from the Prime Minister in Florence is that we are prepared to pay some vast bill to leave. Why? I have absolutely no idea at all. We have some spending commitments up to the end of 2020. Beyond that, nothing. We also, of course, have a stake in many parts of the European Union. And I think it's summed up today to me rather beautifully by a cartoon by Bob in the Sunday Telegraph. And it shows Mrs. Thatcher walking out of an EU building with a big bag full of cash. And it shows Theresa May trying to get into an EU building with an even bigger bag of cash. And that kind of sums up where we are to me. I think the Prime Minister is probably on the verge of making a pretty gargantuan financial offer to the European Union. in return for no promises whatsoever. Your messages flooding in. Martin in Rotherhithe says 60 billion. Is that all? They're also telling us what to do with the Northern Irish border. Their arrogance is beyond belief. Tell them to keep their big noses out of Northern Ireland. Nigel, if the EU will not agree to a free trade agreement, then the EU must be prepared to pay for a hard border. That would not be in the interests of the Irish people, and they'd soon come knocking on Barnier's door, says David. And Alistair Campbell always excites comment. Campbell is a press officer who's never been elected to anything. Why do you keep getting him on? Who cares what he thinks? Well, yeah, but Mr. Barnier's not elected, and Mr. Tusk's not elected, and Mr. Juncker's not elected. None of the people who are making demands of us are elected. They're all appointees in Brussels. And I also think, when we listen to Alistair Campbell, we're also hearing what Tony Blair, and actually many of the Blairites in the Labour Party, still genuinely think. Let's go to Lowestoft, to June. Good morning, June.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning.
So, should we do what Mr. Tusk and the others are asking us to do?
No, I wouldn't have given him a cent. But there you go. Not a dime, not a euro, whatever they want. No, but
so you're a hard liner, June. You're a hard Brexit. I mean, weren't you listening, June, to Alistair Campbell, who told us that disaster will come?
Well, he was saying that he has done some audiences. So, Mr. Campbell, you're obviously still listening. Mr. Campbell, I would love you to come to visit the fishing industry or chicken factories or some factories, or get out of the M25, come out of London and come and visit coastal communities. I never hear you or Mr. Corbyn or any of these guys talking about industry. You never hear it. They never pay visits. So, Mr. Campbell, please could you come to the east coast of England and have a little chat with myself and my fishermen?
Right. Well, that's a pretty open offer, isn't it? So come on, Alistair. Yes, June, and you'll give him a nice cup of tea, won't you, when he's there, and treat him nicely?
And I'll give him a nice piece of fish.
And a nice piece of fish.
If I'm allowed to catch any.
Well, there is a problem with European quotas, I know.
Please, can I just plug one little thing? Tuesday, MEPs are voting for pulse fishing. It has to stop.
I know.
It's illegal in China. It's illegal in the EU. The Dutch have been pulsing away our waters. We're finished on the east coast, all the way down to Ramsgate. They're pulsed us out. They killed the fish. They killed the creatures. They killed the ocean.
June, June, let me just explain to the wider audience what June's talking about. She's talking about a relatively new fishing technique which is being used by, I think, about 60 Dutch fishing boats, and it's called pulse fishing. And what it means is they put an electric shock down to the bottom of the seabed to take the fish in the nets. The problem with it is that it's killing an awful lot of small species. It's killing a lot of fish that are not being landed and sold in market. I think it is, June, an environmental disaster that is going on in the North Sea, and it's all allowed by the European Commission, and much of it is happening in what should be British territorial waters, and I'm very angry about it. June, one quick question on this point, because it does matter. What does Michael Gove have to say to you about pulse fishing and the British position?
I saw George Eustace last week with my MP, and George Eustace is not happy about it at all. I had a meeting in London with lots of different stakeholders in the industry, mainly science. Can I just let the public know there is no science? This country has done no science. It's been a scientific thing that's been done by the Dutch only for 10 years. It's not been looked at. There's 112 pulse trawlers. 10 of those are flagships, which that means that we own them, but the Dutch have them.
Yep.
While I was at the meeting last week in London with these various bodies, CFAS, etc., DEFRA, the French were there. And the French are behind us, Nigel. There was a young lady, apparently they've broken the law. That should never have happened, and a lot of money has gone into it. So I think if any of MPs are listening, and they obviously will, because they learn a lot from you, Nigel, if any MPs are listening, Tuesday you're voting.
Okay, June.
You vote against.
June, you've made a big pitch there, and it wasn't on topic, but it's a fascinating subject, and I know that when it comes to the environment and what's being done to it, people genuinely do care about this subject. And June, thank you. And we will, within the next few weeks, do a fishing special, because I went out on a trawler from Ramsgate a few weeks ago just to see exactly how European quotas are working, and I watched the skipper and his son, running their own under 10 metre boat, and I watched them throwing back into the sea scores of thornback rays that they caught, some of which will have lived, an awful lot of which will actually have died. And we will do a special phone-in on that. And I promise June in Lowestoft we will bring this question of pulse fishing into the equation as well. June, I thank you. Mark is calling from Sevenoaks. Mark, good morning.
Good morning. My idea is that I think that the negotiation should be more of a process of exploring greater flexibility in our relationship with the EU, rather than looking for something more sudden. I think this could help progress the negotiations. At the moment, anyway, the whole of the British state is not in the EU. The Isle of Man is in this free trade area. I think the Channel Islands are not in that even.
No.
So we could start by talking about adjusting these borders. If we're not moving all the regions out at once, that gets round some of the initial problems like Northern Ireland, and it provides places for people to live who are EU citizens here.
But are you suggesting, Mark, that the United Kingdom leaves the EU but Northern Ireland stays in for a further period?
I am suggesting that that it's not considered to be something that all happens at once necessarily. We can be more experimental and scientific about it. We don't have to move all the regions out at once.
I think we do, Mark. I think we do. I mean, we did vote as a United Kingdom, didn't we?
That's true, but there's also the possibility of regions raising that they want to devolve things. And one of the things that we have to remember is that we review our political decisions in a general election every 5 years, and in 2021 it'll be 5 years since the EU referendum, so it'll be hard to argue it would be undemocratic to review that decision then.
Well, actually, Mark, the truth of it is, by 2021, we should have left the European Union, its single market, taken back control of our borders, and it should be an issue of history. The problem is, Mark, my feeling is, the way this government have dragged their heels, that actually, by the time the next general election comes along, we'll still be more in the EU than out of it. We'll be out, I suspect, in name only. Mark, they're suggesting that different parts of the UK could leave the EU at different speeds. That would not be acceptable. Not acceptable, I think, to most of us. I wonder whether the European Union would accept it. After all, they don't want Catalonia to have their own voice, do they? You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 10:46.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
A royal wedding on the way? Could be. Meghan Markle, Prince Harry's girlfriend, is reportedly preparing to bring her dogs to London. Royal commentator and broadcaster Phil Dampier. Are we looking at a royal wedding next year?
There might be an announcement this side of Christmas, and possibly an engagement from this side of Christmas, possibly an early wedding next spring.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
At Homebase, we're all about great Christmas value, like 7-foot artificial trees from just £15, and you can have it delivered to your door for only £5. Homebase, always low prices, terms and conditions apply.
Air France.
La France
is in the air.
Looking to sweep someone off their feet? Air France can whisk you away to the most romantic city in the world, Paris.
Air France.
La France
is in the air.
With flights from London Heathrow starting at £45 one way, it would be heartbreaking to miss out. Simply visit airfrance.co.uk and book by 20th of November. C'est magnifique. Terms and conditions plus credit card surcharge apply.
At Oak Furnitureland, everyone knows our furniture is 100% solid hardwood. And it's also up to 50% off. But most importantly, it's 100% solid hardwood.
Yes, but don't forget it's also up to 50% off.
Oak Furnitureland's 4-day spectacular must end Sunday. You'll find quality 100% solid hardwood with up to 50% off. Our 4-day spectacular must end Sunday. Order today. There's still time for guaranteed Christmas delivery. Visit oakfurnitureland.co.uk to find your nearest store.
Izzy?
Mark, hi.
They want 1,000 of the red dress, 50 now, with pictures.
That's wonderful, but not sure I got 50 in stock. I'll get Cara on conference. Mark?
Yeah?
We've got them. Uploading the pictures now. You got your tablet?
Yeah, looking now. Want to do more in less time? Unified Communications joins up your landlines, mobiles and tablets to improve customer service. The future is exciting. Ready? Search Vodafone Business. Terms and conditions apply.
You are the forward planner, the filler of the Christmas cupboard, and you alone hold the key. For you are the stocker-upper. So why not start now with Lidl's Favorina biscuit selections from only £2.79. Every little thing for Christmas. Subject to availability. Excludes NI.
Imagine if your business's complete IT requirements could come straight out of a box. Well, that's what Intersys can offer. Complete IT management, cybersecurity, backup and disaster recovery, all straight out of the box.
To see how Intersys can manage all your IT, leaving you free to run the business, just search intersys.co.uk. That's INTERSYS.
And think IT out of the box with Intersys, a partner you can trust.
Are electric cars okay for long journeys?
Are there any tax benefits to having them on my fleet?
Are they easy to drive?
Can they go off-road?
Do they keep their value?
Are they any good on motorways? Can you drive them at night?
Can they go up hills?
How many photocopiers can I fit in the back of one?
Got questions about adding electric cars to your fleet? Get the answers at goultralow.com.
We've been thinking about dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves. You get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, my debate with Alistair Campbell seems to have stirred a few of you up on Facebook. Frank says Campbell's contempt of the voting public is beyond belief. Terry says, I'm pleased you allowed Campbell to ramble on. I'm now more convinced than ever that leaving the EU was the right decision, and the sooner the better. And Russell on Facebook says, we need positivity. Britain will do fine outside the EU. We will continue doing great trade, create jobs, and have more cash to build upon an already great, strong, prosperous nation. The more you realise it, the more it will happen. Just like anything. If you fill yourself with negativity, you end up failing. And I do think, Russell, there's a lot of truth in that. But so much of a narrative around this debate is negative. And we're getting it from many members of Parliament. We're getting it from many of the bosses of the big businesses. Goldman Sachs repeatedly doing this stuff. Even this week, their chief executive calling for a second referendum. But David Davis and Mrs May are in a fix. They've been given an ultimatum. They've got a fortnight to meet the demands of our unelected lords and masters in Brussels, or we will not be able to talk about trade. And Kevin from Bermondsey, by text, says, shouldn't Theresa May be giving them an ultimatum? Do you know what, Kevin? I think we've reached that point, because what we saw at the Florence speech was Mrs May basically making concessions. Mrs May appeasing the European Union, thinking in return they'd be reasonable. David Davis repeatedly asking for them to be reasonable. And I'm afraid my view is that if you appease bullies, you get nowhere. You've got to stand up for yourself. That's what I think. I wonder what Philip in Windsor thinks this morning. Hello.
Morning, Nigel. The specifics of the Irish border I'd just like to sort of pick up on. I find it slightly disingenuous of the Irish government, and Alistair Campbell come to that, to raise the implicit threat of Good Friday collapsing as a result of Brexit. I mean, there's always going to be a political disagreement in the island of Ireland, but it will be driven by economic concerns, and I reckon the Irish government have got much more to worry about than the politics of the border than the economics of the border.
Well, what happens, Philip, in Brussels, and the Good Friday Agreement, something, of course, a process that John Major began and that Tony Blair finished, and with a huge amount of give and take, to get that onto the blocks. What happened was, even though it was the Americans, actually, it was Senator Mitchell, if you remember, that acted as the broker between the two sides. The European Union managed to get the name of their organisation written into the Good Friday Agreement, and they kind of claim in Brussels that had it not been for the European Commission, there wouldn't have been a peace deal in Ireland. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I spent a year of my life trudging up and down that particular border, and you can make it as hard as you like, it's still going to be porous.
It's about 350 miles long, isn't it, Philip? Is that right?
I couldn't tell you precisely how long it is, but it's long enough.
Right, okay. Yeah, and much of it's rural. I mean, as I say, I tried to argue this with Campbell earlier. We've had, a common travel area since 1921. Ireland itself is not part of Schengen, which I think makes things a bit easier. But there is this question of goods, of tariffs, moving across the border, which is why actually the solution to this is for us to have a simple free trade deal with the EU. Then I think, Philip, it's a non-issue.
I think you're right. I mean, the amount of smuggling that used to go on down there, and probably still does, was phenomenal. It wasn't just weapons, it was eggs, diesel, cattle.
Yes.
Everything. It was...
and of course now, with the South being in the Euro, and with the North being with sterling, you're going to get goods moving back and forth, aren't you, to take advantage of price differentials?
Of course you are, and that's why I say it's the economic dimension which worries the Irish government. The implicit threat of politics is, I find, disingenuous.
Yeah, so do I, Philip. So do I, Philip. And all the people, and I know lots of people in the Northern Irish unionist community, and all of them want to compromise in any way they can. Nobody wants to threaten, nobody responsible wants to threaten the Good Friday Agreement, the peace that's been achieved. Philip, I thank you for your call, and Philip saying, frankly, this is being hammed up as an issue when really there are quite practical ways of dealing with it. Carol is calling from Kent. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Nigel.
So what does Mrs May do?
Well, yes, we agree. Of course we agree. That the taking into consideration that other European countries don't play cricket according to rules. So we agree. We don't pay it, but we agree nicely.
Right.
Smile. Probably we're going to be very ashamed of me. I'm very sorry. But I just think that we've paid, not the government, but we as taxpayers have paid already an awful lot into the EU.
Well, we paid a huge amount into the EU, of course we have. But so you're suggesting, Carol, that we go in and say, yeah, OK, fine, we'll pay you, and then when it comes to it, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, we just knock them, do we?
That's right.
OK, that's an interesting tactic from Carol there. And my last caller on this subject is Tony in Fareham. What do you think, Tony? And not just Theresa May. I feel a bit sorry for David Davis, because he kind of is piggy in the middle, isn't he? He's the one arguing for reason, and now they're laughing at him.
Well, I think you're right, and good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
I think they're just constantly, it's a smoke and mirrors game they're playing at the moment. It's they're just trying to, 1 week it's free movement of people, next week it's the rights of EU citizens and vice versa, and this week it's the 60 billion euros. Well, my only question on this is, please can you add up all our assets and take that away from the 60 billion?
Well, that's interesting, Tony. So one of the arguments I've been making is that we've got a 9 billion investment in the European Investment Bank, and so we should be able to get that investment out. Maybe not immediately, but we should be able to get that out. Alexander Stubb, one of the vice presidents of the EIB, has said the UK will get its money back, but it'll take until 2054. I mean, whichever way you look at this, they're being completely unreasonable. And I wonder, Tony, whether what we ought to do is go to Juncker and say, look, we know you've got a huge wine cellar that is owned by the European Commission. Presumably, as we pay 16% of the bill for the whole club, we can have 16% of your wine cellar. I wonder what he'd say.
Well, I think that, the thing that the public doesn't realise is that they're charging us for projects. They're going to be charging us for projects, EU projects, that have not yet been financed or budgeted for.
Yes.
And that's where my big problem is, because literally they're holding us to ransom for the poorer countries of the EU, bless them, who cannot afford these projects, and then richer countries like France and Germany are going to be putting their hands in their pockets to subsidise our lack of. Should
Mrs. Tony,
money.
I'm going to ask you final question, last word on this subject. Should Theresa May be prepared to pay 53 billion sterling for us to leave the European Union?
Definitely not.
Definitely not, says Tony in Fareham, and definitely not, say I. It is outrageous. Time we started putting out a few demands and not being dictated to by everybody in Brussels. Now, a group of 90 MPs, including former Tory ministers, have written to the Prime Minister and Chancellor calling for urgent funding for the NHS. 33 of them are Conservative MPs, and they're putting pressure on the government ahead of the budget to deal with these short-term pressures. Do you think these 90 MPs are right when they say the NHS needs urgent funding, and how much perhaps should it be? Call me on 0345 60 60 973. Tell me what you think. Maybe you think money's misspent sometimes in the NHS, in which case you can text to 84850. And if you work in the NHS, tell us what the pressures are like. Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and watch me on Facebook. I'm live from London next.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the Chancellor says his budget will lay the foundations for the UK's future outside of the European Union.
What I will present is a balanced package that will prepare Britain for a post-Brexit world so that we can be a prosperous, successful nation in the future. And if that's going to happen, we have to prepare the ground to make sure we're ready for our post-Brexit future.
In Wednesday's budget, Philip Hammond is promising to deliver the building of 300,000 homes a year, up 50,000 on current plans, and millions more for high-tech start-up industries. While on the subject of Brexit, the Chancellor is confident trade talks will happen by the middle of next month, despite the issue of the so-called divorce settlement payment and the question of the Irish border.
We're in a negotiation with the European Union, and we'll continue to have that negotiation, but I do sense that we may be coming to a point where we can start to see more momentum in those talks, and I hope we will see some forward movements, some developments at the Council in December.
In other headlines this hour, there are concerns Zimbabwe's crisis could turn violent if Robert Mugabe doesn't resign immediately. Officials at the ruling ZANU-PF party say they're worried the military could start opening fire to protect the 93-year-old president from protesters. Commentator on African politics Joseph Ochienyo understands why he wants to cling to power.
Mugabe is one of the wisest guys in town. But not only that, Mugabe, remember, before the fallout with the West in the 90s, he had been the most democratically elected leader 4 times before the fallout in the mid-90s. So he has good grounds for that.
The sister of Gaia Pope describes the teenager as the absolute light of my life after a body was found. Police say they're confident it is that of the 19-year-old, describing the death in Dorset as unexplained. Gerry Adams says he's going to stand down as president of Sinn Féin next year. He says leadership means knowing when it's time for change, and that time is now. Former Northern Ireland Secretary and Labour MP Lord Peter Hain has told LBC of Mr Adams's importance in the peace process.
Gerry Adams deserves great credit for turning the Republican movement, Sinn Féin and the IRA, away from the horror of the terror towards a democratic road and a political road. And that's one that I think they'll stay on, despite some splinter groups seeking to disrupt and awaken all the old terrorist actions.
Buckingham Palace has released a new photo of the Queen and Prince Philip ahead of their 70th wedding anniversary tomorrow. It shows them standing side by side in the white drawing room inside Windsor Castle. The first significant snowfall of the season is expected to arrive on parts of Scotland overnight tonight. Forecasters are predicting a few centimetres just north of Glasgow and Edinburgh, with a warning it could disrupt tomorrow morning's commute. LBC weather, cloudy in the southwest, sunny elsewhere with rain spreading into the west and northwest by late afternoon, a high of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
Incredible Black Friday deals are already live at very.co.uk. Why wait? Discover the gifts you'll love to give, from smart tech to must-have gaming. Make someone's day with a Samsung 4K Ultra HD Smart TV with a 49-inch curved screen for an immersive viewing experience. Right now at Very, it's only $499.99, saving £130, plus standard delivery of $6.99. Get more out of giving with very.co.uk.
LBC Travel are accused in New Cross. The A20 Lewisham Way is partially blocked both ways because of an accident involving two cars at Florence Road. In Beckton, it's slow on the North Circular northbound because a car's broken down at the Beckton roundabout for the A13. In Northolt, Whitton Avenue West is closed in both directions because of a police investigation between Floreston Court and Pets Hill. In central London, Regent Street is closed both ways because of an event between Oxford Circus and Piccadilly Circus until 8 o'clock tonight. And on the Tube, there are severe delays on the Piccadilly line westbound between Acton Town, Uxbridge and Heathrow. That's because of a signal failure. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
The National Health Service has got its problems, boy. Waiting lists getting longer. Warnings that within the next 5 years, that waiting list of 4 million will become as big as 5 million. A lot of people working within the NHS feeling under tremendous pressure. And, of course, winter coming, and who's to say what would happen if we had a flu crisis, for argument's sake. So 90 MPs have clubbed together on a cross-party basis, writing a letter to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and I guess a lot of this because the budget's coming up this week, begging for more immediate, rapid funding for the National Health Service. And the fact that MPs can cross party lines on an issue shows you, hey, something big is happening here. Let's try and get a bit of an inside track into what the stresses and strains are in the National Health Service. Joining me is Dr. Claire Gerarda, former chair of the Royal College of GPs and a London GP herself. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. So tell me, how tough is it for people now working inside the NHS?
Oh, it's very tough, but it's not us that matter, is it? It's the patients. And only last week we got a circular from our local district nursing services to say that all of them in our local area were on red alert. And what this actually means is services being curtailed to those at their end of life, pain and symptom control, routine referrals. That means your grandma's routine dressing or giving her anti-diabetic treatment, urgent referrals. So this is what it means. Because you can't actually work any harder as a doctor or a nurse. So what happens is you reach capacity. And then what happens is, of course, the patients suffer. And though the headlines are on waiting times and queues in A&E, it's the unmet need that's the problem. As I said, if you're dying at home and you need your syringe driver putting up and there isn't a district nurse to put it up, then you may end up dying in agony. So it's really important that we focus on the unmet need, because once you're in casualty or A&E, then you're in a place of safety in a sense. So it is pretty bad, actually.
Now, I take your point about the patients, but equally, those that are treating the patients, if their morale is bad, then we're probably going to get a worse service. I mean, why are you all in the NHS now at capacity? What has caused this?
Well, I hate to say this, but I think it's years of underfunding. It is the fact that, and, this will be an issue close to your heart, where a lot of the services, especially our community services, are built on a bedrock of overseas doctors and nurses. The Brexit effect has certainly happened within health far earlier than anyone would imagine. We've also got an ageing population, much more complexity. The population has increased considerably, and we haven't had simultaneous increase in services.
Isn't that really, Claire, at the heart of this?
General practice. Well, the funding issue is at the heart of it, but I think it's also where the funding has gone. So the funding predominantly over the good days went to hospitals, rebuilding hospitals. Good, we needed new hospitals and consultant staff, but where it didn't predominantly go, and we've got a great deal of evidence for that, is into primary community services. Now, the problem about GP services you've been hearing is that we really are at the tipping point. District nursing services have tipped over, health visiting services have tipped over, and when you get these community services tipping over, we can't keep our patients at home for very long, which means they go to casualty, they go to hospitals, and then we start this terrible effect of the whole thing.
But in terms of funding, Claire, you know, both Labour and Conservative governments have considerably increased spending on the National Health Service. You can't say that you can't say that governments withheld money from it, can you?
No, I mean, to be blessed, I've put in socks. I think right across the years we have had more funding, but in real terms, if you take health inflation into account, and also if you take the increase in complexity, you as patients demand more.
Yeah.
You demand more for more people. So there is an inbuilt inflation, and the NHS is probably the most efficient health system in the world, whatever anybody says to deny it and to decry it. So if we're struggling, what we actually need, and you know, the brave act from these 90 MPs to sign a letter, what we need fundamentally is more money. We cannot squeeze any more activity out of the hard work staff.
How much
that we've got?
How much money is needed, Claire? Do you have any idea just how much is needed?
I'm not a politician, and I've heard figures. I mean, we have a 4% health inflation anyway, so it certainly needs to be more than 4%. But I'm not, you know, I rely on others to look at figures like that. What I do know is that we have curtailment of services right across the board. We've got fewer beds per head of population in this country than most other countries. I think Portugal has probably got fewer doctors per head of population, fewer nurses per head of population. So we need to have an investment akin to the investment that we had in the early 2000s.
Isn't the problem, Claire? Isn't the problem actually we've got a population crisis? That, in fact, the numbers of people in this country have... I mean, when you look at it, you know, we've gone from 55 million people in the early 1990s to now an official figure of 65 million people. Isn't that at the heart of it, that actually we just haven't got enough hospitals, enough doctors to cope with the population rising that quickly?
Well, that's absolutely right. Maybe we need compulsory birth control. I'm joking before anybody rings in.
No. That's the problem with joking, is people would take it seriously, but...
Yes. But I mean, other countries have had increasing population, haven't they? I mean, China's had a massively increasing population.
Sure, but they haven't got a national health service, have they?
But it's not just hospitals. It's not just hospitals. Because, well, other countries have national health services, so Italy, Spain, and they've dealt with it. It's not just hospitals. It is investing in primary and community services to keep people away from hospitals, which is what they want, and to keep them safe at home. And when they do come to the end of life, to be able to die in a place of their choice.
And Claire, finally, you know, from what you've seen of the health service, are you happy with the way the money that is put into it is spent?
Yes, I am, except I would want more in general practice. But I'm a real sentimentalist. I've worked now in the NHS for about 40 years. I love it. I think it's the most amazing service. I think it's held together, sellotape and brown paper of the staff that work within it. It is a great British institution, and I think it is important that we cherish it and don't actually let it wither on the vine, which is sadly what will happen if we don't get an injection of money.
OK, no, you couldn't be clearer. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was Dr Claire Gerarda, former chair of the Royal College of GPs, and a London GP herself, making an impassioned plea for more money for GP surgeries. And my first caller on this subject is Dr Bob Gill from Sidcup. Bob, good morning.
Hello, Nigel.
Good morning. So you heard what Claire Gerarda said. How much more money does the NHS need, Bob? And also, is it being spent properly?
Well, let me address your second point. Is it being spent properly? Well, you know how stealth and politics work. We've seen this in the EU. You go on about this yourself. The EU project started off as a trading bloc, but soon morphed into a political project. Okay. Well, the NHS, the equivalent stealth, the hidden truth about what's happened to the NHS, is the stealth progression to privatisation and an insurance-based system. Now, in order to get us to that, the public have to be kept in the dark, and a massive management and bureaucratic infrastructure has been put in place, which is diverting 10% of the budget away from looking after patients.
So the privatisation, Bob, that you're talking about, this was begun by Tony Blair, wasn't it?
It was begun under Thatcher. You had the outsourcing of ancillary services in the hospital. It was progressed by Tony Blair, who made NHS Trust into Foundation Trust, setting them up as standalone businesses.
Yeah.
Then you had more and more outsourcing of clinical services. And now in charge of the NHS, it's not Jeremy Hunt, it's a man called Simon Stevens, whose former job was president of United Health Global, America's biggest private insurer. Now, this should be ringing alarm bells, Claire Gerarda's comments are not helpful because she did her best to avoid the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the NHS is being set up to collapse. The defunding has been quite deliberate, and this has been described by various people. The latest comment on a research published by Cambridge was economic murder. They estimate 120,000 people have died prematurely as a result of deliberate underfunding.
But is it possible? Yeah. Is it? Now let's just sort of think about this. Is it possible that the use of private services by the National Health Service could actually reduce costs and reduce waiting lists, and may not of itself necessarily be a bad thing?
There is no system in the world which runs a private health system which delivers universal health care at a lower cost. It just does not exist. What private companies do, they cherry pick, they will do the easiest, most profitable work and dump the expensive and complex. That's how it works. Insurance-based systems look for the healthy patients, they want to collect the premium, and as soon as they become complex or expensive, they get dumped. If you just take the cleaning service, for example, now evidence has appeared that outsourced cleaning, private cleaning in hospitals, has resulted in a higher rate of MRSA, the killer bug.
Yes.
So this is the reality.
All right.
I'm a GP. I see outsourced services. They do not provide the comprehensive care that they replace, and they fragment the service, and Bob, they introduce more bureaucracy.
Bob, you think that if all of this was run by the state, by the NHS itself, we get better bang for our buck?
Definitely. The evidence is clear. You know, if you look at international comparisons, the NHS used to be 3% administrative cost. It's approaching it's past 14%.
Wow.
And the government, dare not tell us what the actual cost is.
That is an amazing statistic. 3% to 14% for the administrative cost of the National Health Service. Dr. Bob Gill from Sig Cuppa, thank you for that call and that amazing statistic, which does suggest to me that a lot of the money may not be going quite in the right place. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:15.
You are pernickety. What is the first
I just want to say a couple of things.
My problem with it is the following.
LBC at the weekend. Alex Salmond.
St Andrews University, Scotland's oldest university, has only 5% of its students come from the deprived backgrounds. I think St Andrews should look shame on itself.
Leading Britain's conversation. Alex Salmond. Today from 3 on LBC.
At Argos, our Black Friday event is on. Get the Xbox One S console with Forza Horizon 3 and Star Wars Battlefront 2, only $199.99. Plus add Forza 7 for just £20 more. Go Argos. Ends 23rd of November, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Peggy 16, terms and conditions apply. See online for details.
Sky TV customers, bring the magic of Sky Cinema home this Christmas for just £10 a month. With spellbinding premieres like Disney Beauty and the Beast.
I'll never leave you again.
And classics like Home Alone 2.
And there's plenty more where that came from.
With over 1,000 movies on demand to watch whenever you want. So, that's Sky Cinema for just £10 a month. Search Sky Cinema. New 18-month contract. Further terms apply.
I know who designed Princess Di's wedding dress. I know who phoned home. I know how to do a silly walk. And I know which part of the room you should never put baby in. But I don't know my state pension.
Find out more about your state pension and how much it should be. Get to know your pension. Visit yourpension.gov.uk.
How many tablets did you take this morning? On average, people over 55 say 4. That's over 100 a month. Well, at least for your painful joints, there's an alternative treatment. Voltarol 12-hour gel works deep in the joint to fight pain and inflammation all day long. Voltarol 12-hour gel. Let's hear it for the joy of movement. Ask your pharmacist.
Voltarol 12-hour MHLP 2.32% gel contains diclofenac diethyl ammonium for relief of pain and inflammation. Always read the label.
Are electric cars okay for long journeys?
Are there any tax benefits to having them on my fleet?
Are they easy to drive?
Can they go off-road?
Do they keep their value?
Are they any good on motorways? Can you drive them at night?
Can they go up hills?
How many photocopiers can I fit in the back of one?
Got questions about adding electric cars to your fleet? Get the answers at goultralow.com.
What's the smart way to fly to Dublin? With Aer Lingus, you get a 4-star service and a warm Irish welcome the moment you step on board. But that's not all. Take your pick from a wide choice of reliable flights from Gatwick and Heathrow, with fares to Dublin from $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. So, whether you want to catch up with friends, see the folks, or enjoy a last-minute winter break, smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
Is your business structured in the correct way to manage your exposure to income tax, capital gains tax and inheritance tax? Does your business structure assist you in achieving your goals? Or do you feel like you suffer a tax charge every time you want to do something new? Let Barnes Rofe look at your business structure and see if we can help you with these issues. Visit barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
As 90 members of Parliament, cross-party, urge the Prime Minister and Chancellor to urgently put more money into the National Health Service, I'm asking you, are they right to make this demand? And is the money that's being put in being spent properly? And before the break, we had a doctor from Sidcup, Bob Gill, he was saying to us that actually, the middle management spend in the NHS has gone up from 3% to 14%, and he saw the privatisation of the NHS as being private companies taking money out of it for themselves and not bringing more competition. Richard in Chelsea says it's not a national health service, it's an international one. Oh, Richard, I said this a few years ago. I was screamed at. It's also saddled with time-wasting half-wits who should have gone to a chemist, plus a bunch of overpaid managers who have zero common sense. Well, one of the ways, Richard, of stopping the time wasters would be to do what they do in France. Now, in France, if you book a GP appointment and you don't turn up, you get fined €10 because you've wasted time at that GP surgery. And I know a member of my family, and she worked as a receptionist in a GP surgery. She said the remarkable thing was, firstly, the number of repeaters, i.e. people who come in once a week for a chat and clearly haven't got anything too gravely wrong with them. And secondly, the number of people who book appointments and simply don't turn up. And yet, whenever you suggest, if anyone suggests that people should pay a deposit that will be returnable for a GP appointment, everyone says that's wrong, and that would be privatisation in itself. Now, one of the things that's been said about the NHS crisis I would like to deal with right here and now, and it is that we're being told that because of Brexit, yes, of course, everything from the weather to the National Health Service that goes wrong is, of course, because of Brexit. And we saw some screaming headlines a couple of weeks ago, Radio 4's flagship Today programme, telling us that there'd been a drop of nearly 90% in EU nurses registered to work in Britain over the past year. A drop of 90%. 10,000 people gone. Catastrophe. Sir Vince Cable, picked up off the back of that and said it just showed what Brexit was doing to our nation, that people weren't welcome here anymore. And that was the story that ran until we got the truth. Because whilst everybody seemed to be happy to quote the number of EU staff leaving the NHS, no one bothered to mention last year the number of EU staff who would join the NHS. And perhaps that's because, during the very same period, the health service statistics show that 13,013 EU citizens took up jobs in the National Health Service, a net rise of 3,181 of EU citizens working in our health service. So I think we've dispatched that one, I hope, to the boundary. Yet more of the sort of rubbish project fear that we get in this country that is not based on fact. Right, so one thing we can tick off is the crisis in the NHS is not because there are no nurses left in the country. That is nonsense. I wonder what Jill in Muswell Hill thinks. Jill, should we put in a lot more money very, very quickly, and perhaps should the Chancellor begin this on the budget this week?
I absolutely think not.
Right.
And I think not, because the fact of the matter is the NHS is broke. So let's fix it. Let's fix it.
Okay.
You know, it's really simple. It's glaringly obvious that it's broken.
So how do we... Okay, well, if I accept that it's broken, and actually virtually everybody that works in it says they're up to capacity, it is not delivering in a way that it needs to do. So what are you suggesting we do to fix it?
Well, what I'm suggesting we do, you know how we love a report or two or three?
Yeah.
Let's conduct a report and draft somebody in like Professor Patrick Munford. Get him in. Let him conduct a report. And let's see what the issues are in our NHS. And I'm thinking, once this report is conducted, that maybe he'll come up with an idea of a two-tier or three-tier NHS system. Because the truth of the matter is, life is not fair. Why should the NHS be done and conducted in such a fair way? It should not.
Well, we have had a commitment in this country since the late 1940s to a national health service.
The 1940s you're telling me about. It was carried out in the 1940s at such a time, and probably when we really needed such a system.
Okay, so let's take accident and emergency, shall we? Let's take road traffic accidents, for argument's sake. I mean, are you suggesting that some parts of the country should provide better A&E facilities than others?
What I'm saying is that the country it needs to be organised in such a way that is fair to the whole of society. And when I say that, I mean that, you know, the wealth is generated in the South. Why should the South have the same NHS service they do in the North? I think that's ludicrous.
Do you? Because the South is wealthier?
Absolutely right, yes. We should have a health service that suits our environment, and so should the Northerners. They should have a health service too that suits their environment.
So what you're saying is that those
really controversial. I
understand so what you're saying is those that are wealthy should be prepared to pay through an insurance system or whatever it may be for their healthcare. Is that what you're suggesting?
That is what I'm suggesting.
Okay,
yeah. It sounds mad, but yes.
No, it doesn't sound mad. And then it would be rather like a welfare system, that the welfare system was there for those who were either out of work or on very low salaries, as opposed to those who were earning more. Jill, there is a logic to what you say. Whether there is a demand or a desire in this country for it is a separate thing, but thank you for making the point. Now, when it comes to putting money into the NHS, there was, of course, you may remember, during the referendum campaign, a bus that went around the country with a figure on the side of it. And that figure was 350 million a week should be given to the National Health Service. And boy, did that cause a row, because that was our gross contribution to the European Union, namely our contribution before the British rebate, which is now under threat, of course, in every way, before the British rebate was taken off, and before the money that comes back to us in the form of agricultural subsidy, regional support, etc., has taken off. And that's led to a massive row. And I do hope to never get another call from an LBC listener saying that I was somehow driving that bus around the country. I was very strongly opposed to that gross figure being used. Interestingly, so was Jacob Rees-Mogg. Jacob thought the figure was a mistake, that a lower figure, which still would have appeared huge to voters, but a lower figure that was more justifiable, should have been used. And Jacob explained in the last few days that he himself went in to meet the Vote Leave team to say, please don't do this. I myself, as I've said before, begged Michael Gove to drop it. I thought it was a rotten idea. But Jacob now says that actually a promise was a promise, and the one thing that would really give people faith, not just in the Brexit process and in the vote, but also that we were doing the utmost for the NHS, was we should increase spending on the National Health Service by 350 million a week. That's Jacob's suggestion, but that would be pushing on for 20 billion sterling, and I suspect if Philip Hammond increases it by 4 or 5 billion, that would be a lot. But Jacob thinks we should chuck 20 billion at it, and then everybody would be happy. I wonder what would make Alex in Bolton happy. What do we need to do, Alex, with our National Health Service?
Well, I love the MOG, that's for sure. But
Right.
certainly throwing no money at it is not going to solve the problem. My son works in the NHS. He's a porter. He's been there for 5 years. He spends most of his day transporting people over 25 stone around the hospital, or big families of non-British origin.
Yeah.
And he's a really altruistic kid. He honestly, everybody loves him. But even he comes back from work disillusioned by the waste that goes on in the hospital, the amount of managers they have. Many times he's only given 7 hours between shifts, so he'll finish at midnight and he's due back on at 7 in the morning.
So he's working hard.
He is working hard, but it's in complete and utter disarray. The management in the NHS, for me, they could just privatise the whole thing, because I actually think they'd get better return for their investment. Because, let's look at it. I'm financial controller for a manufacturing company that exports £12.5 million worth of equipment a year. We do about 5% in the UK, so, I'm into exports. I don't worry about Brexit. We deal on world trade terms all the time anyway.
And now your point, Alex.
In our company, we pay the absolute top rate of pension. We started it and we put it in straight away, saying, right, 4%, you put 4%, we'll put 4%. Sounds really generous. NHS puts in 17% for the NHS workers. How can this be out of taxpayers' money?
Because it was felt, Alex, that people working in the National Health Service weren't being paid enough, I guess. Alex, I thank you for your points, and I will pick up in a moment on the treatment of non-British citizens within the National Health Service. It's a point I've raised before. It's contentious, but we do need to talk about it. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
The Chancellor says he'll deliver a post-Brexit budget on Wednesday, preparing the UK for life outside of the European Union. Philip Hammond is promising 300,000 new homes a year and major investments in high-tech start-up industries. Zimbabwe's ruling ZANU-PF party is removing Robert Mugabe as its leader and president and is expelling his wife from the party. Senior figures stood and cheered at the plans when they were announced at a special meeting earlier this morning. Police say they are confident they found the body of a missing teenage girl following searches in Dorset. 19-year-old Gaia Pope hadn't been seen for almost 2 weeks. Police described the death as unexplained. LBC weather: cloudy in the southwest, sunny elsewhere with rain spreading into the west and northwest by late afternoon, a high of 9 degrees.
LBC Travel is looking very slow in New Cross. The A20 Lewisham Way is partially blocked both ways because of an accident involving 2 cars at Florence Road. In Bow, the traffic lights are out on the Bow interchange roundabout at Bow Road and the A12 Blackwall Tunnel approach. In central London, Regent Street is closed both ways because of an event between Oxford Circus and Piccadilly Circus until 8 o'clock this evening. In Hertfordshire on the M25, there's still a lane closed in both directions between junction 21A for St Albans and junction 22 for London Colney. That's for barrier repairs after an accident that happened on Friday. And on the tube, there are severe delays on the Piccadilly line westbound between Acton Town, Uxbridge and Heathrow Terminals 1, 2 and 3. That's because of a signal failure. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Fleet managers. Maybe you don't use fleet tracking because maybe your fleet seems safe and secure. Maybe your fuel costs seem okay. Maybe your drivers manage just fine without it. Maybe it's time to stop running your business on maybes. Fleetmatic's fleet tracking solutions can help you reduce your costs, serve more customers and improve the safety of your employees' driving habits anytime, anywhere. Maybe that's worth a call. Text the word fleet to 66777 or visit fleetmatics.co.uk. Fleetmatics, a Verizon company.
Block management. 2 very simple words. But what do they actually mean? Well, there's budget approval for starters, then service charge invoices, health and safety paperwork, cleaning, gardening, maintenance, inspections, contracts, insurance, emergency call-outs, and a whole lot more besides.
So for complete block management solutions, just remember 3 simple letters: ABC. ABC Estates will take care of all your day-to-day management, leaving you as happy as Larry. See abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
We've been thinking about dad dancing. How you and he enjoy it in equal measure. He gets to demonstrate his signature moves. You get an evening of free comedy watching him. It works both ways. And then we thought, shouldn't we have the same relationship with our customers, rewarding them for banking with us? And we thought, yes, we should. So we did. That's why with the NatWest Reward current account, we give you 2% back in rewards on household bills. Search NatWest Rewards. NatWest, we are what we do.
£2 monthly fee. Earn rewards on eligible bills paid by direct debit when paying in £1,500 per month. UK only. Eligibility criteria apply.
Know-it-alls. Nothing worse. But I'm not going to pretend I know everything. I just want you to have a think about what you drink at home through the week. The couple with a takeaway. The few in front of the telly. The might as well have another. Well, cutting out just a few of those drinks could improve your health. Even lower your blood pressure. Would you really miss them? Ultimately, it's your shout. Have a little less, feel a lot better. See how at drinkaware.co.uk.
At Argos, our Black Friday event is on. Get the Xbox One S console with Forza Horizon 3 and Star Wars Battlefront 2, only $199.99. Plus add Forza 7 for just £20 more. Go Argos. Ends 23rd of November, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Peggy 16, terms and conditions apply. See online for details.
Air France. France.
La France
is in the air.
Looking to sweep someone off their feet? Air France can whisk you away to the most romantic city in the world, Paris.
Air France. France.
La France
is in the air.
With flights from London Heathrow starting at £45 one way, it would be heartbreaking to miss out. Simply visit airfrance.co.uk and book by 20th of November. C'est magnifique! Terms and conditions plus credit card surcharge apply.
Getting business finance can be a hard nut to crack, but with Market Invoice, it's a piece of cake. Flexible business loans and invoice finance to keep your business thriving. And our customer service is the cherry on top. Let's make it happen. Market Invoice. Easy as pie. Find out more at marketinvoice.com.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
On Thursday night, we talked about Zimbabwe. We talked about what looked like the end of 37 years of rule from Robert Mugabe. And I had a lot of Zimbabweans ringing in, some who thought he was a hero, others who thought he'd been an absolute disaster and a pretty barbarous dictator. But it looked like on Thursday, it appeared that he was gone. There'd been a military takeover. And then on Saturday, he pops up at a university ceremony, and there are big questions as to what's happening. So what we do know is that he's set to meet army chiefs at some point today, and indeed the governing ZANU-PF party itself is meeting to work out whether they should dismiss their founder and long-term leader. So it's all a little bit confusing. Perhaps to give us some clarity on this, I'm going to ask the Labour MP for Vauxhall and, importantly, the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Zimbabwe, Kate Hoey. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Nigel.
So, as it stands, he's still in charge, is he?
No, he's not in charge at the moment, and for the last month or two, this has been being plotted by the ruling party, ZANU-PF, because they want to make sure that they get, when he was going to, he was getting on, he was 93, there's been all this discussion about who was going to take over when he left, big factions within ZANU-PF, one wanting his wife and one wanting Mnangagwa, who had been sent out of the country just a couple of weeks ago by Mugabe, and that was the catalyst then for the army, who've always supported Mnangagwa to come in. Now, Mugabe is a very, although he's very, very old, he's still quite alert at times, and he has obviously decided that he's not going to be forced out and is being stubborn. But no doubt about it, today he will be removed from being ZANU-PF leader, and then he will go. But it's what happens then is the important thing. And
the army very clearly not in favour of his wife, Gucci Grace, as she's become known. And clearly somebody that's rather enjoyed the high life and perhaps some of the bling that money can buy. But Kate, what process then would ZANU-PF go through to pick the next leader?
Well, I think what those who have got some political nous in Zimbabwe want to make sure that the international community see this as not being a coup as such, that it's done constitutionally. So there would be the opportunity for the parliament this week to impeach Mugabe if he doesn't resign. But given the huge amount of numbers of people out on the street in Harare and all over Zimbabwe yesterday, he couldn't have missed seeing that, Mugabe. And It may be that he wants to go with some dignity, and he will resign and be given some kind of, honorary this, that and the other. The reality is that people, even though there is huge delight about Mugabe going, there are still an awful lot of people who recognise that he was the great liberator and would not want to see him actually humiliated, despite all the terrible things he's done, and therefore he is likely to, I don't think we should be feeling any pity for him or sorrow for him, because they've stacked away millions of pounds all over the world, and he will want to go. I think if he knows that time is up, he will want to go so that he can be still able to move around and get access to that money. I don't think he's going to be, taken out and shot.
No. And Kate, finally, is this right now a moment of hope for the people of Zimbabwe?
Yes, I mean it is, and it's clear that this is a cathartic. It's cathartic. They've got. If he goes, they've got rid of him. But what we have to see, there are elections due next year. They have to be free and fair, and the role of the international community, and particularly South Africa and SADC and the African Union, is to make sure that those are genuinely free and fair, because otherwise ZANU-PF will simply put in one despotic dictator for another, Mnangagwa, who was responsible for thousands of deaths and torture over the years, and we won't be in a better position. Zimbabweans are a very peaceful, loving people, and I think this could be the real opportunity now to get that country back up on its feet by getting a genuinely free and fair election. And we as the British government have to give as much support as we can to that.
Well, let's hope that happens. Kate, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Well, that was Kate Hoey, Labour MP for Vauxhall and chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Zimbabwe, making it clear that Mugabe is gone. It's over, but it's just a question of can they have full, free and fair elections at some point in Zimbabwe and perhaps get back on track. And can the NHS get back on track if it's given billions and billions of pounds of money, as 90 MPs are calling for, or is the money perhaps not being spent the right way? And Joan on Facebook, picking up on Dr. Bob's point earlier on in the show, says Bob is so right, and this should be made more known and stopped in its tracks. And what Bob said, he said the administrative expenditure within the National Health Service has gone from 3% of its budget to 14% of its budget, and that's what I think has got Joan worked up. Tough Ale says on Facebook, they spend billions on a system that does not work. The same goes with many other systems of government, yet no one ever seems to get fired. Well, it's a pretty fair point. I wonder what Paul in Sittingbourne. Paul, what can we do to help the NHS? It's at bursting point. I mean, I personally think it's the population crisis that has put this pressure on, but I know that's an unfashionable view in some circles. What would you do to make things better?
Hello, Nigel. It's lovely to talk to you.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Nigel, what I would do is on a Thursday, Friday and Saturday night, the NHS, if you go in the A&E, it is packed.
It's a war zone, isn't it? It's a war zone on a Friday night. Yeah,
it's like a war zone. What I would personally do, when they come out of these clubs and pubs, paralytic drunk, and they get an ambulance, and they take them to the A&E and they drop them off, I would personally be in there with a board and I would charge them £100 per time they come in. I'll say, right, you got drunk, you got paralytic, an ambulance has picked you up, that's £50, delivery charge, and here's £50 for a service.
Well, Paul, if you were actually going to charge them the cost of that treatment, I'll tell you something, an ambulance and a crew going out to pick somebody up, an A&E ward with a nurse and a locum doctor or whoever's on duty, be a lot more than £100, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, but it'd be a start price, and if you go in the second time, it'd be £200.
Right.
And the maximum would be £400-500, something like that.
All right. No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. Now, what would you do, Paul, say in the middle of February, and someone who's been a smoker all their life gets a bad chest infection, that starts to turn a bit pneumonic, and they're taken in to A&E. Would you charge them?
Yep, I would charge them for smoking £100. If you've got cancer, then that's different. If you've got terminal cancer, that's different. But if you've got chest infection because you're smoking, I would charge you £100.
Right, okay.
You know what you're doing with your body. You know what I mean?
I think under your system it could be very expensive for some of us. And what about fat people, Paul? So somebody who is, we heard earlier, woman phoned from Bolton and said that her son's a porter and has to move people around who weigh, she said, 25 stone or more. So someone's, 25 stone, they're grossly overweight, morbidly obese, and they start to get a bit of a flutter. And so they're brought in to have an ECG. How much do we charge them?
I would charge them £100 as well, mate.
Right.
I would keep on it. I tell you, Nigel.
Would anybody that goes to A&E not pay £100?
Because he spent hundreds and hundreds of pounds for food. He just sits there, he shoves food down his own throat, and it's his own fault. So I would charge him. I would bill him for it and say, right, you've done it. You want an operation, you want a gastric band, £500.
Well,
it's not free, we charge that.
But where would you draw the line? I mean, would 13 stone be too fat, or would 20... I mean, where would you decide that somebody...
I'll say around 18 stone.
18 stone?
18 stone, yeah, I'll say 18 stone.
So 18 stone's the cut-off. And what about alcohol? Would there be a breathalyser to see whether you've drunk enough to be charged £100, or...?
No, when they bring you out, when the police are called and they say, right, you're going to have to go to A&E because you're paralytic, I would then turn around and say, right, call an ambulance. As soon as they call an ambulance, boom, you're fined £100 or £200.
Do you drink, Paul?
Just a sausage roll. Pardon?
Do you drink?
No, I don't drink no more.
Right. Do you smoke, Paul?
I don't drink no more. I don't smoke. No, I've never smoked in my life.
Right.
My dad smoked.
But I just
smoked when he went in hospital. He should be charged for it.
Did I just hear you order a sausage roll in the background?
I'm having a sausage roll, yeah, but I'm 6'4", Nigel.
Yeah.
And I'm 13 stone 4 ounces.
Well, there you go. Paul, you're not going to get charged a beam, but thank you very much for the call. Actually, the point Paul's making is a point that many make, particularly, they say, when there are people who, through their own fault, through getting drunk and involved in fights, cause all sorts of problems in the National Health Service. Many people think we should charge them. I have to say, Paul's regime is pretty tough. There aren't many of us, I think, that would ever go there and not pay £100. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Noir's.
Senior British politicians have been paid tens of thousands of pounds by organisations closely linked to the Kremlin. But is it ever acceptable for elected officials to take money from a hostile foreign government?
Majid Noir's on LBC.
Oh, yeah. High quality, affordable kitchens designed in your own home. That's Room Sense.
That's Room Sense.
Book your free Room Sense home design visit and we'll measure up, show you samples, create a stunning kitchen design and give you a quote all before we leave.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Book today at roomsense.co.uk.
Air France. France.
La France
is in the air.
Looking to sweep someone off their feet? Air France can whisk you away to the most romantic city in the world, Paris.
Air France. France.
La France
is in the air.
With flights from London Heathrow starting at £45 one way, it would be heartbreaking to miss out. Simply visit airfrance.co.uk and book by 20th of November. C'est magnifique. Terms and conditions plus credit card surcharge apply.
What if you could get that winning feeling every single month? With NS&I's premium bonds, every month you could win tax-free prizes from £25 up to £1 million. And NS&I guarantees that every pound of your savings is 100% secure because we're backed by HM Treasury. Who knew saving could be so exciting? Premium bonds at nsandi.com. Minimum initial investment £100. NS&I. Safer savings set you free. To re-record your message at any time, press #.
Hey, baby. No, that's rubbish. Hey, just calling to see what's shaking. Hi, it's me, just checking in before I hit the old Jim-a-rooney. No. Hi, I just love you, okay? Can't say that.
Message completed.
No. No.
With Vodafone Pay-As-You-Go One, you can stay in touch as much as you like and never pay more than £1 a day. The rest is on us.
Hi, listen, about that message.
Search Vodafone Pay-As-You-Go One. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Opt in and spend £1 a day for unlimited standard calls and text plus 500 meg of data in the UK and Europe zone. Terms and exclusions at vodafone.co.uk/pay-as-you-go1.
You're not perfect. You're a couch potato sometimes. You're a gym bunny most of the time. You're chia seeds and quinoa one day. You're partial to a pasty the next. You are a temple. You're a fun park. You're a yin. You're a yang. You are who you are. You are one of a kind. And at HealthSpan, we celebrate your individuality. However you look after yourself, HealthSpan have the vitamins and supplements to help you be you. Visit healthspan.co.uk today. HealthSpan. Go on you.
Fly to Malta with EasyJet from $39.99 for more to see, more to do and more to remember. One way per person, 2 flying, limited availability, credit card fees apply, see easyjet.com.
I know who Charlene married. I know what a flux capacitor does. I know how to write hello on a calculator. And I know how to do the big fish, little fish. But I don't know my state pension.
Find out more about your state pension and how much it should be. Get to know your pension. Visit yourpension.gov.uk.
At Argos, our Black Friday event is on. Get the Xbox One S console with Forza Horizon 3 and Star Wars Battlefront 2, only $199.99. Plus add Forza 7 for just £20 more. Go Argos. Ends 23rd of November, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Peggy 16, terms and conditions apply. See online for details.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
90 members of Parliament cross-party are urging the Prime Minister and the Chancellor in the budget this week to pour billions into the NHS. It's in crisis. Many doctors and nurses are at or over capacity as we speak. We touched earlier on foreign nationals being treated within the National Health Service. It's an issue that I've raised in the past and, of course, been screamed at for daring to talk about it. But £2 billion a year is the cost of health tourism in this country. You may say that's a small part of the overall health budget, but hey, it's still £2 billion. Now, our previous caller, Paul from Sittingbourne, suggesting that actually grossly overweight people, smokers, drinkers should pick up the pieces of some of the cost, but I get by text, never mind drink and cigarettes, what about drugs? Yeah, very good. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what A&E departments have to put up with from people on drugs. I would imagine it's probably, in some parts of the country, a very big problem. Don in Herne Hill disagrees vigorously and says tax from alcohol covers hospital costs. Well, Don, I remember being told that smoking-related diseases cost the National Health Service £2 billion a year, and some say it could be as high as £3 billion a year. Yeah, tax revenue is £11 billion a year, so you could look at it that way too if you wanted to. Nigel, I live in the south of England, and I'm not wealthy. What should I do, says Alfie? Well, that was a suggestion we had earlier, that actually the NHS should be like the benefit system. It should be there for people on lower incomes, and those on higher incomes should provide their own insurance. It's not something that I think is very popular. And the other issue that you've been talking about is however much money we put in, how much of it is being lost through waste or this massive increase in middle management within the National Health Service. Charles in Birmingham is my next caller. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Nigel.
So, what's to be done, Charles?
Well, I don't want to give them any more money because they waste too much. Now, let me two incidents. The first is interpreters. They cost £150 an hour to interpret for people in the hospital and doctors. And if they do 10 minutes, they still get £150 an hour. That's one thing we could cut out.
Right.
And the other thing is waste on Zimmer frames, clutches, walking sticks, wheelchairs. Once they've been used, they are put to scrap and scrapped out instead of being refurbished. How much is that costing us?
Sorry, so if somebody gets given a Zimmer frame...
Yes.
And then that person dies or doesn't need it anymore...
It's scrapped. They don't want it back. Or same with the commode. It's scrapped.
So are you saying, in the case of a brand new Zimmer frame, so someone's had a hip replacement or whatever it is,
yes,
and they can't get around their house without the use of a Zimmer frame for a 6-week period or whatever it may be, are you telling me that the hospital don't take that Zimmer frame back?
Yes, and I can prove that. My neighbour, who died a couple of years ago, and I know someone who died recently, they had Zimmer frames, and so one of their relatives come to me and says, can you get rid of this? She scraps. Someone will take scrap, and they're scrapped. My mother-in-law stayed here for a few weeks because she didn't get in the flat, and she had a commode. We said, "Do you want it back?" "No, scrap it." And we have to take it to the scrap. Yes, we and if you walk around, people have these, they'll tell you they are scrapped because they've been used and stretched.
Wow.
And that's not me. That's what the NHS say.
Well, I don't know what a brand new Zimmer frame would cost the NHS to buy, but it's a reasonable sum of money, isn't it? And there must be I don't know, tens of thousands of them, perhaps hundreds of thousands of them that are given out. Charles, you've raised a very interesting point, not something I have to say that I was aware of. Charles from Birmingham, thank you for your call. And Charles saying a lot of this stuff is given to people, and rather than being reused and perhaps lasting for years, it simply gets scrapped. James in Tooting is on the line. James, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So we keep putting... Whenever you hear people talk about cuts, James, there are no cuts. We keep on putting more and more money into the National Health Service, and yet the thing is completely at capacity, and if we get a flu crisis this winter, there's going to be one hell of a problem.
Yeah, my understanding is that the majority of governments, barring one of the last 30 years, have increased the budget towards the NHS in relative terms.
Yes.
That being said, just to play on one of my own experiences of the NHS in the last couple of weeks, I actually tore a ligament and dislocated my thumb. Had to take a trip to A&E, sat in A&E to get it sorted, and you go in and fill a form and it says, right, where's the injury? The injury is in my left hand and it's my left thumb. I then get through to the nurse who, the poor person, tries to go through the list of about 15,000 different options to choose my x-ray. Now, my point is... we're going to have to increase funding towards the NHS, but where is that funding actually being spent? Is that to paper the cracks, or is that long-term projects that will help increase efficiency? Because it's not me, it's irrelevant, people going in and putting more money, but if I have to sit in a queue, fill in all the information that they need, and then that poor person has to go through a list of 15,000 different options, when common sense dictates that I'm here for my thumb, and it's my thumb that needs an x-ray.
All right, so what you're saying, James, actually is the whole thing is just grossly bureaucratic.
Completely.
Yeah. And when you got treatment, how good was the treatment?
The treatment is fantastic. When it comes to staff, I think nobody ever disagrees that the quality of care you get from the NHS.
Yeah. I have to say, James...
If I could touch on one point, on the sort of privatisation point.
Yeah, go on, quickly.
I don't disagree... I do disagree with privatisation to an extent. On the whole, in most industries, I agree with it, but in the same as the train lines and the NHS, when there is no competition, because you do not choose if you are in an accident which hospital you would prefer to go to, then privatisation is not successful in those industries.
Because you can't provide proper competition. No, James, I thank you. And look, my experience of A&E is I was in a major road traffic accident back in 1985, multiple fractures of leg, skull, goodness knows what else. I also had a plane crash. So twice I've been wheeled into A&Es in a pretty rough condition, and I have to say, if you're an emergency, the NHS is amazingly brilliant. Whether it's as good at diagnostics and other things is a separate debate. Breaking news. Kate Hoey was absolutely right with her prediction just 15 minutes ago. Robert Mugabe has been dismissed as the leader of the ruling ZANU-PF party, according to Reuters. Former Vice President Emerson Mnangagwa has been appointed the new leader of the party in a widely expected move, according to party sources. So Kate was suggesting that if the former Vice President takes over, frankly... And her words were, that'll be no better, because he himself has been directly responsible for torture and the death of thousands. Maybe not the bright new dawn that those people out campaigning on the streets of Harare yesterday would have hoped for. Back to the National Health Service, back to the 90 MPs demanding billions. They're going to get more money in the budget this week, I'm certain of that. They're not going to get Jacob Rees-Mogg's call for £350 million a week, I don't think. Would be very... I suspect it to be very popular if they did. And I'm not actually sure whether the Chancellor wants in this budget to reduce the deficit or not, but I don't see them pumping in £20 billion. Anne in Edinburgh, what's wrong with the National Health Service?
Can I first say that I've had to say a different name because I will be known. I'm in one of the senior management positions.
Okay.
For number one, 5 years ago, we had one person in the middle management role. We now have 5.
Wow.
The other problem that we really have is that nobody takes accountability for their spending. It costs around about £7,000 to recruit somebody, but they recruit and they get rid of, and they don't look after their staff. They take on the very lowest people that they can possibly afford to have, who then just go, or they ask ridiculous amounts of qualifications for a fairly low post, and they just leave. So that's one of the main things. The other problem is stationery. Anybody who works in the NHS will know that unless somebody has their own personal responsibility for their own budget, people don't come and take one sheaf of paper, they take a whole box, or they take a box of pens, or they do anything like that.
And
until you bring the finances into somebody's personal pocket.
And we're out of time. We're out of time, which is a great shame. And I know it's not your name because you don't want to be identified, but I think what you said, that a few years ago in your department there was one person doing middle management, admin, and there are now 5, says an awful lot. Thank you very much indeed, and for being brave enough to ring in. And to say that, you've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'll be back tomorrow evening at 7. Coming up at 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's Alex Salmond. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, inspectors are to question children who wear the hijab to primary school amid concern that girls as young as 4 are being forced to wear the Muslim headscarf. Now, I stand implacably opposed to putting a headscarf on children, but how can the solution ever be to interrogate the children themselves? Before that, Philip Hammond will use the budget this week to announce plans to build 300,000 homes every year. That's the equivalent of a city the size of Leeds. But will this solve our unaffordable housing crisis? But first, senior British politicians have been paid tens of thousands of pounds by organisations either founded by or closely linked to the Kremlin. Is it ever acceptable for elected officials to take money directly from a hostile foreign government?
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 12 o'clock, Zimbabwe's ruling ZANU-PF party has removed Robert Mugabe as its leader. They've replaced him with former Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa, sacked by the 93-year-old. It follows thousands of protesters who took to the street in an unprecedented show of opposition to the president yesterday. Editor of the Zimbabwean, Wilf Mnangagwa, describes it as a shift in attitudes.
The problem we have here is that all the people who are driving this are people who have been supporting Mugabe along the way. From 1980, they're the same people who've been backing him, who've been his taskmasters, and so on.
The Chancellor is hinting Britain will make proposals to the European Union on the so-called Brexit divorce bill within the next month.
We're in a negotiation with the European Union and we'll continue to have that negotiation, but I do sense that we may be coming to a point where we can start to see more momentum in those talks, and I hope we will see some forward movement, some developments at the Council in December.
Philip Hammond's comments come as he promises to deliver a post-Brexit budget on Wednesday.
What I will present is a balanced package that will prepare Britain for a post-Brexit world so that we can be a prosperous, successful nation in the future. And if that's going to happen, we have to prepare the ground to make sure we're ready for our post-Brexit future.
In that budget, the Chancellor is going to promise 300,000 new homes a year will be built and major investment in the high-tech industry with money for trialling driverless cars, electric car charge points and 5G mobile networks. A British sailor has died after being swept overboard during the round-the-world yacht race. Simon Spires from Bristol got into difficulty when the vessel hit gale-force winds in the Indian Ocean. The 60-year-old retired solicitor was sailing for Great Britain on a trip from South Africa to Australia. Gerry Adams is to stand down as president of Sinn Féin next year. The 69-year-old also says he won't be running in the next election for Parliament. Former Northern Ireland Secretary and Labour MP Lord Peter Hain has told LBC the potential future of the party.
Sinn Féin has made major advances in the Republic, as it has in Northern Ireland. It's dominant in Northern Ireland alongside the Unionists, and it's yapping at the heels of the leading two traditional parties in the Republic of Ireland as well. And the question will be whether this new generation has the same strategic vision as Adams and McGuinness and his generation have displayed to take things forward.
Prince Charles will visit the island of Dominica on the final day of his 3-day tour, meeting survivors of Hurricane Maria. 2 months after it happened, 95% of the country is still not with electricity. Tim Henman believes Andy Murray doesn't need a replacement for former tennis coach Ivan Lendl following their split. The former British tennis number one believes Jamie Delgado, a long member of Murray's coaching team, can take on that role. LBC weather: cloudy in the southwest, sunny elsewhere with rain spreading into the west and the northwest by late afternoon, a high of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
To re-record your message at any time, press hash.
Hey, baby. No, that's rubbish. Hey, just calling to see what's shaking. Hi, it's me, just checking in before I hit the old Jim-a-rooney. No. Hi, I just love you, okay? Can't say that.
Message completed.
No.
With Vodafone Pay-As-You-Go One, you can stay in touch as much as you like and never pay more than £1 a day. The rest is on us.
Hi, listen, about that message.
Search Vodafone Pay-As-You-Go One. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Opt in and spend £1 a day for unlimited standard calls and text plus 500 meg of data in the UK and Europe zone. Terms and exclusions at vodafone.co.uk/pay-as-you-go1.
LBC Travel in Merton, the A239 Cranmer Road is closed in both directions because of an accident between Cricket Green and Carl Shulton Road. It continues to look slow in New Cross. The A20 Lewisham Way is partially blocked both ways because of an accident involving two cars at Florence Road. The Woolwich Ferry is currently suspended because of technical problems. In Bow, the traffic lights are out on the Bow interchange roundabout at Bow Road and the A12, the Blackwall Tunnel approach. And in central London, Whitehall is closed both ways because of a parade between Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square until 4:30 this afternoon. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Majid Nawaz.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the regular weekend show. It's Majid Nawaz every Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 3. Now, senior British politicians, it has been revealed, have been paid tens of thousands of pounds by organisations that are either founded by or closely linked directly to the Kremlin. I'm wondering, is it ever acceptable for elected officials, elected politicians, public servants in the United Kingdom to take money directly from what is essentially a hostile foreign government? That is Russia. Is it ever acceptable for our politicians to take money directly from a hostile foreign government? The number to call to speak to me about that is 0345 60 60973, 0345 60 60973. The lines are open. Get your views in early. Or you can text us on 84850 or tweet us at LBC or tweet me directly at Majid Nawaz. Now, the fact that Russia is a hostile government shouldn't necessarily or really require much explanation. Unfortunately, because of the times we live in, it requires a bit of explanation. So let me just start off by telling you two things. And that is that the head of MI6, as recently as last year, warned of the profound propaganda threat being posed by the Kremlin, by Russia, to the West. On top of that, we have as recently as this year, in July, the head of GCHQ warning that Russia is causing mayhem in cyberspace. And now, of course, with the American federal government's investigation into Russian propaganda efforts to sway our democratic system and, in fact, to fracture our democracy, it's something that shouldn't really be too controversial, that the Kremlin, that Putin, that Russia doesn't have our best interests at heart. Unfortunately, due to the times we live in, it is controversial. However, I think for me, to set this conversation up, it suffices to say that I, as a British patriot, trust our security services, our GCHQ and MI6 in their consistent assessment, not only a one-off mistake, not a dodgy dossier on the Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction and the invasion of Iraq that I never supported, but their consistent stance of almost every single Western intelligence security organisation, all of our allies across Europe, in America and in Britain, that the Kremlin poses a hostile threat. So if anyone wants to question whether indeed Russia is a hostile foreign government, I'd probably begin to wonder about where your own loyalties are, to be honest, because it's not even, across all of our allies across Europe and in America and in Canada, it's not even something of doubt any longer within